Ask me my three main priorities for government, and I tell you, education, education, and education.
It is generally considered that the expansion of education is always a good thing. But in this video, I am going to offer an alternative view that the 21st century expansion of education has in fact been a disaster. In order to make an honest comparison, we must first take a brief look at the past, to the year 1987, to see an example of an intellectually minded television show produced in an era before the expansion of higher education.
Now, you've raised a lot of very fundamental concepts here, and I think we ought to take them one at a time for the sake of clarity. Let's begin where you began, with the distinction between a picture theory of meaning and a tool theory of meaning. The later Wittgenstein is no longer saying that that words or sentences picture what they're about. He's saying that a word or a sentence is like a tool, and what it means is what you can do with it, so that, in fact, the meaning of a term is the sum total of its possible uses. Now, it's in the nature of a picture that it does, in fact, picture only one thing, pictures an object or a state of affairs, where it's in the nature of a tool that it has many uses, perhaps an indefinite number of uses. Now that applies to his view of language, doesn't it?
Yes, precisely. Yes. Yes, let me say a little bit more about that.
It is worth noting that McGee was born in 1930 to parents who owned a clothing shop, but from these relatively humble beginnings was still able to get a scholarship at Oxford. I have always admired McGee's style of delivery, and though there is much we might disagree about if he was still alive, he is the sort of person you can have a discussion with. Now we send millions of people to university. Can you ever imagine any of our current crop of media personalities speaking with even a fraction of McGee's eloquence? If the population as a whole is becoming more educated, surely the media they produce and consume would reflect this. Instead, sending more people to university did not make people smarter. It just made universities dumber. Now, long before Dr. Ali Lucas' incredible insight on smells, or Cambridge students inviting intellectual heavyweights like Hassan Piker to speak at their union, it was becoming pretty obvious that there were some problems even at our most prestigious institutions. But I want to be clear that my ire is directed at the state of humanities education rather than that of the STEM subjects. Back in the late 90s, when I was a teenager, every boomer I knew would tell you that you needed to go to university. This was certainly true in their time. But as you can see from this graph, for many of my generation who attended university, having a degree had either no positive impact or possibly even a negative impact on their future earnings. We all know someone who went away to university to get an arts degree only to end up working as a barista or some other low-level occupation. This was my experience after spending 3 years and £30,000 studying humanities at Brighton University. I think the average student will leave with around £70,000 to £80,000 worth of debt today. Enough for a deposit on a decent house or a second-hand Ferrari. It has become obvious for a while that many non-STEM degrees have become diluted to the point of worthlessness, and the university sector has become little more than an indoctrination system that also sidelines as a patronage network for left-wing academics. If you ever raise the issue with the left that some students are getting into serious debt to hamper their employment prospects, You will quickly watch them morph from Che Guevara into Ayn Rand, screaming about personal responsibility because they know their cushy job depends on throwing thousands of young people to the wolves every year. The experience of being unable to find a non-entry-level job when you were told you had the golden ticket can certainly embitter you against the capitalist system. I felt this way for a while, but after being able to get a half-decent job with an AAT Level 2 qualification that took about 6 months and cost about $1,000, I started to realise it was my activist lecturers who had actually screwed me over. While it is obvious that many STEM degrees are still worthwhile and required for many jobs, the laws of supply and demand are still in place. And in the UK today, an HGV licence will get you an equivalent salary to a radiology degree, because it is marketable skills that ultimately matter in the job market, not having a diluted and outdated qualification. Even the mainstream media is starting to question whether higher education is providing value for money, after it emerged in a scandal that 15% of the Romanian population in the UK are currently receiving a student loan. Some people still want to argue that it is all for the best, in the best of all possible worlds, and that student choice is a guarantee that funding will be well spent. In reality, we have a quasi-market in which 16 and 17-year-olds are choosing, mainly based on what they enjoy at school. They are not mainly thinking about their earnings at age 50 or the skills gaps facing the economy. Even if they were, the information gaps they face are large. While student choice is important, it alone cannot be regarded as a guarantee that hundreds of billions of pounds will be well spent. The pressures on public spending are huge, and there are many desirable things, even within higher education, we would like to be able to fund. And it was already clear, even from the old data, which predates recent expansion, that there is a significant amount of higher education which is not good value for students or taxpayers. At some point, that needs to be addressed. The truth is, the Sunday Times story is really the tip of the iceberg. The government talk about reform, but they are barely scratching the surface. UK student loan debt has become larger than the national debt of some countries, including South Africa and Pakistan. It is highly likely that the primary beneficiaries of this are the universities and lecturers and admin who get paid out of these funds. It is also worth noting that the University Superannuation Fund is worth about £60 billion, the largest of all the UK pension funds. Despite the astronomical amounts ploughed into education every year, the UK is not even in the top 10 countries for engineering graduates, behind countries like Ukraine, Mexico, France, and Vietnam. Engineers are vital to an economy, and engineering skills are some of the most practical and widely adaptable. Producing a glut of engineers can help an economy in a way that masses of excess philosophers and psychologists just don't. The sad reality is that of the small numbers of engineers the UK does produce, many will be foreign-born and are likely to seek better wages and living conditions elsewhere, further exacerbating the skills shortage. So far, we have mainly focused on higher education, but what about the state of secondary and primary schools? This Channel 4 report pretty much sums it up.
What do we know about the scale of violence in our schools? This programme has obtained exclusive information showing the severity and frequency of attacks on teachers specifically, some of which have resulted in them suffering serious fractures, sight loss, and even amputations. Now, the attacks on teachers are frequently so violent they had to be reported to the safety regulator. From 2013 to 2023, across Great Britain, there were nearly 5,000 violent injuries of school staff reported to the Health and Safety Executive. These included more than 1,000 fractures, over 100 where a staff member lost consciousness, 16 where they had lost or reduced sight, and 4 incidents that led to amputations. And the situation is getting worse. In 1 year alone, to March 2023, there were 682 reports of violent injuries, and that's double the annual number a decade before. And the primary school trend is particularly worrying. If we look just at attacks on primary school teachers now, you see that the attacks treble from 117 violent injuries reported in 2013. After a dip during the pandemic, that rises to 3 times more, 371 in 2023. Now, it's unclear whether all these injuries were inflicted by pupils. Some could be caused by parents or other adults. But separately, we can say just how many children across Great Britain are suspended from school each year for physically assaulting an adult. More than 55,000 suspensions in the school year ending in summer 2023 alone. Now, we've also obtained exclusive information on the age of children involved in these violent incidents. The most common age for a child to be suspended for assaulting an adult in schools in England was 6 years old. In Wales, also just 6 years old. And figures weren't available for Scotland. Now, these attacks are a major worry for teachers.
And some of those injuries can be life-changing in some instances. We're talking about teachers who never teach again and are unable to because of the injuries that they've sustained. But the psychological impact is also significant. For many teachers, that is enough to prompt them to decide not to continue their careers as teachers.
Well, a spokesperson for the Department for Education said they were committed to turning the tide on poor behaviour. They said they were providing a mental health professional in every school, but there was more to do. The Scottish Government said it had an action plan with councils to respond to concerns about behaviour in schools. And the Welsh Government said it was developing proposals to improve behaviour. But what all of this shows is the level of violence in our schools is clearly extremely concerning.
Well, if the adults aren't safe, I doubt the kids are. The current AI revolution can have a significant impact on the way we deliver education in the 21st century. Grok 3 knows more about most subjects than your average school teacher. But while AI offers the potential for some serious efficiency savings in education, be prepared for the teaching unions to oppose it every step of the way, as their personal interests will always come first. Many, if not most kids, could happily leave school at 14, saving huge sums of money in the education budget and increasing the working age population dramatically. It is simply not worth spending billions of pounds every year to ensure that every teenager has read of Mice and Men. I make this video as someone who values intellectualism, but the current state of our education system is a symptom of a civilization in terminal decline. Never before in any human endeavour has so much extra money been thrown at institutions only to produce worsening results. Our current education system has produced the most unpatriotic generation ever, who have no interest in fighting for their countries at a time when the geopolitical situation becomes more tense with each passing day. The West will continue its downward spiral. For those of us concerned about this, it seems to me that we would be better off focusing our time and effort, creating an institution that is sympathetic to our worldview, which on a small scale of 30 to 50 students could be successful despite the oversaturated market. My suggestion would be either an institution named after Thomas Carlyle in northern Scotland, or perhaps one dedicated to Italian elite theorists based in southern Italy. Ideally, you would want someone like Nima Parvini to be the dean. This kind of intensely focused education away from the city would appeal to a certain type of student. And if a few grants could be won, an institution like this could easily break even or be profitable, while also guaranteeing the survival of our ideas and producing the next generation of future leaders. Our equivalent of doing PPE at Oxford. You might need to crowdfund 2 to 3 million, or you could do the project cheaply in less grandiose buildings. But right now, this feels like the only positive action we can take. Carnage is coming. Now it's all about finding a safe, comfy seat to watch it happen. The introduction of degrees by companies like Palantir, who I'm not a huge fan of, are serious competition to a sector that may well see restraints on its future central funding. Why spend 3 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to maybe get a job at a NASDAQ company, when you can spend nothing and have a guaranteed job after 2? The consequences of a failed education system can be dire. This table of high-performing math students shows the incredible advantages China now has in this field. Without serious educational reform, we will never catch up.